Hello everyone, today we are carrying on with the army. Obviously a lot of people seem to enjoy the last video and we're actually getting somewhere now and we're on a move, and I have just finished up what I didn't finish up in the last video, so I'll show you that now. The upper shock mount now fully welded in, seam welded on the inside. I dug out that top weld up here, redid that, and obviously, as you can see, welded that all in there now. So we now have a matching pair. I do have to weld on the back side of it, which means I've got to get inside and it's going to be a bit of a pain. But that bit there is done. What I need to do now is remove this block of wood. This lower arm needs to be matching to that one. And we also need to brace up this one, fully brace on those lower corners down there, both sides, and, you know, finalize those lower shock mounts inside there. So that is what we shall be doing today. If you remember, and you've been keeping up with the channel, we did a little jig for this, which is literally right here, and it has been welded on the bench for about 5 months, something like that. The control arm bolts into here. We bolt that in there. We then bolt the other side to the bench. As you can see, this was bolted in there. On this side, we're going to move these blocks to that side so the control arm can go this way, and we'll bolt it onto the bench that way. Obviously, it's the direct 180 opposite. And we have a jig that's, you know, 180 of what it was before. So just tack these onto here for now. Obviously they're strong, but I don't want to go crazy with it because you still want to remove the jig off the bench afterwards. So basically the way this works is this bush, and this hub mounting surface need to be in the factory locations. When we're narrowing it, we want to bring this factory hub location in, but we want to keep these mounts bolted to the subframe. That's a factory mounting point. If you look here, those brackets on the bench are mimicking these two brackets just here, which are welded to the chassis. Now this took a whole bunch of working out on how much I needed to narrow it by, etc, etc. The drop plates here are basically the reason why we're narrowing it, because once we add these on, it extends the track width, and then once we add these on and narrow it, it's nearly in the factory location, and we get to tuck the wheel that we have. The wheel that we have for this wouldn't fit without all these modifications, and it also wouldn't air out. So that's the reason for it. So to start this off, we're basically gonna, obviously you can see here I've started cutting. We're gonna chop down this plane here, and this bush is gonna stay here, but the rest of the arm is gonna go over, and we're gonna basically bolt this bush onto that side. And the distance between that bush moving from the inside there to the outside and then bolting up is the exact width that we need to narrow this arm. So before we cut anything, we need to mount it on the inside, space this plane here so it's narrowed, but then when we cut it, we can then put the bush in the OEM location, and then we can obviously weld our new section in here, the box section, across like this. I think it'll make sense in a minute. I'm pretty sure I've already filmed this, but I'm just going over it again to catch people up of what the hell we're actually doing. So, as you can see, is now over the other side of here. We have the width of how much we're actually narrowing it. So now I can cut along there, and if I bring that bush in to here, we can then just basically weld that bar there from there to there, and then that one is done. Obviously get some good welds on it, and then you can do the other side exactly the same process, and then obviously you can finish welding it fully and bracing it after it's out of the jig. But you just need the jig to make sure it's still the perfect triangle from factory. Bush in there, and then you basically have to join that like that. I think you get it. Bit of box section, slide it inside of that arm. We have a arm that is going to be welded together. So obviously weld down there, weld all the way around. Same again on the other side. And I will join you when we have an arm which is narrowed. Well, it is narrowed. I don't know what the air quotation's about, but yeah, you get the idea. And just like that, we have a pair of narrowed arms. So this one is obviously not finished, and this one is also not finished. So if you remember, we've actually had to notch this because that actually sits up in there. So we've got to do a little notch on that one just there. Same again on this side, we literally just mock it up there, draw around it, and then do a little notch in there. We've got to relocate a few things. So you can see roughly here that the hub bolt's there, and the brake line has now obviously moved over. So we need to move this brake line over here. And then this handbrake tab was here, and obviously it's now going to be somewhere like over there now, basically. So we've got to move that again. But before we move the tabs over, I'm going to gusset it both sides just to tie it all in and make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to follow this contour, and we're going to basically make a plate that follows this line here because the shape looks a bit off at the minute. We just want to round it off and make it look like it was meant to be there, and just make it look OEM as possible. So gusset that, both sides, upper and lower, and then basically do the same on that side. Rinse, repeat. And you get something like this. Make 4 of these out of metal. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are winners. One of them, stitch along there, stitch along the edges, brace it all together, paint it black, you'll never know, and it all ties it in together with a nice shape again. So 4 of those, and I've got to cut them all out. And honestly, I need a plasma cutter more than you would ever think. It is a nightmare, but what are you going to do? After way too much time, I have 4 of these. And now I can tack them on, and basically I'm going to stitch weld them all the way around the circumference of it. Not fully seam weld it, just stitch it, because that's what the original arm is stitched, so it might look sort of original. My aim is once this is all black, you won't see it. You won't notice it's been modified if you're looking underneath it. You know what I mean? And being all squared off is exactly what these control arms are. So this is not usually what my OEM would do. Usually I try to make things look OEM, but this doesn't look OEM from the factory. Just looks like someone made it in their back garden. Is what it is. It wouldn't fold down. I need a new welding helmet. If Artec want to send me a new welding helmet, that would be great. Thank you. As you can see here, I went from stitching it to almost fully seam welding this back together. So that is one fully reinforced control arm. Yeah. This metal here is so rubbish compared to the 5mm that I've just put on it. It welds so weird, but we got it done. We got it done. 2 finished reinforced arms. That's a lot of welding, and a lot of cutting, a lot of welding, and I've had enough for today. It's 7 p.m. and I'm gonna let these cool down, and then I will go home, and tomorrow we'll start on making the shock mounts on these arms and basically getting the rear finalized, hopefully. Right, new day, Thursday afternoon. Spent this morning putting a chassis notch in this Polo Dune. So I haven't had a chance to get this fully back together. So control arms are now back on the car. As I said before, after narrowing, we need to put our brake tabs back on. So these were obviously over here. Now they're going to be, just down here. Same for the handbrake mechanism. It was over there. Now it's bringing it in. Brake line has obviously been relocated and bent a little bit because it used to sit down in there. But with the drop plate, it obviously can't go down in there. So bent this a little bit to follow the actual flow of the control arm basically, and weld these on here and then get them off, box this in, and then we'll need to make our new shock mount. So this shock mount here is the original one. You can see there's a hole there, a nut on the back. Probably going to cut both of these braces out, but on the other side, I'm pretty sure I filmed this before, but I did start chopping this out, and this hole here is aftermarket. So I put this hole in there, and I'm pretty sure that's where the hole for the shock wants to sit. So if this bolts up here nicely and corresponds with that, I can then make a template off of this brace here, cut it out, make it on the bench out of 5mm, weld 2 of them in here, and then we can have basically the same as this, but this side. But yeah, as a tester, drill that hole. Hopefully that's in the right position. We're good to go. Let's do some more welding. There's a lot of work on these rear arms. There's a lot of work on these rear arms, but it's absolutely mandatory to make this car work. Try and replicate it. Had to stick a couple of washers in there, but now I can now take this to the bench and replicate it, knowing that we've got the reference points down here. Makes our life a lot easier to do everything on the bench now. So yeah, take these back off, more welding, more reinforcement, give them a lick of paint, and we'll be good to go. I'm literally working with the scraps here. Need more metal. This is taking a lot of metal. This is what I've got left to make the shock mounts of my 5mm. I hope it's okay. It's really hot. Blew some holes in that thin stuff there, but that's fine. Found a bit of strap, so I don't have to cut it out of metal now. Much easier. Luckily, that little nub in there is basically the exact amount of washers that we put in there to get the correct width. Nice. So, what I'm going to do, make a couple more of these, cut these 2 braces out, and then we basically, obviously this only goes flush up to there. So once I cut these out, I know exactly where this needs to land because it's dead straight. And the edge of this is actually chamfered, so it sits flush. So yeah, just little reference points like that. I've also made a reference point that the edge of this hole here is actually the exact width or length or placement, should I say, of where the inner structure needs to sit. So it needs to sit like that in metal. Simple. Right, more time grinding and welding done. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 shock mount brackets. Now these are all chamfered. You can see I've cut the inside of these braces off, so that's all clean, ready and prepped to go. This is obviously going to go in there, and we're going to get a smaller one that goes in there, something like that. And then we'll weld those in, seam weld them along there. Probably not going to weld around the bottom edge of the bolt there because the bottom piece of that is going to be very close to it. So I don't want to weld it and then can't get this in there. Obviously, I've still got this one, so I can measure to double check exactly where that wants to sit, which is 90mm away from that edge. 90mm. There you go, one-handed. Weld that in. Nice. Now, because it's getting late and I want to finish this video as in like we've got a set of finished arms, I'm going to finish this bit on here and then I'll do that one off camera. So basically what I think I'm going to do with this is bring this edge out here and then we'll just do a big triangle shape that goes in and then just box it in instead of having this bit in here because I think it might just be a bit awkward to do that. So let's trim that out, make it a square, and we'll start again. Look at that bowing there, right there, is from that heat. Crazy. Couldn't get that up, so I basically evened out the curve, so it makes it look like it was meant to be there. I'm gonna make a little panel up for this, and I'll join you in 3, 2, 1. There you go. That is one notched arm. I decided to leave that edge long and just weld on the back side. So when you look from this angle, it looks like it's straight. Does it matter? Not really, but there you go. There's one completed arm. All it needs now is a coat of black, Gravitex it, and a matching pair, but I think that is finalized. I'm gonna do another few welds down here, couple down here. I might put one of those plates on this edge as well. The only reason that these crack here is I think it's because they've only got the one support, whereas this one's got a pair, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. I'll put another one there, I think. I'll put another one there off camera, but yeah, a lot of work in this control arm here, and a lot of work in that one. And at the end of it, you get something that looks kind of janky, in my opinion, but we started with something that looks janky, so it's kind of looking OEM. I always find when I do stuff like this that the more modification you do, the more janky it's gonna look, unless you spend hours and hours like laser cutting pieces and making everything perfect. Sometimes you just gotta get it done and just deal with what you've got. I mean, it doesn't look bad, it just looks how it was before. But I feel like all I've done is just cut some metal out and weld it onto an arm, which is realistically what I have done. But it serves a purpose now. That's still really art. But yeah, purpose of the video, got that done now. Just imagine I've done 2 in this video and you'll be good. The next video, well, hopefully we can start getting some work done on this, as in getting the car back together. This car, after these arms now, can pretty much go back together now. I've got the fronts to put on, paint all these arms, all the bits that we've modified for this car have got to be painted, and pretty much everything can go back together fully now and actually run airlines and get the car actually on the floor for the first time, which is crazy. It's actually going to happen. So yeah, thank you for joining me on my custom control arm mod. Yeah, thanks for watching. See you later. Goodbye.